Hey, welcome back to another Smite 2 video. Today I'm doing something a little bit different. I wanted to just talk about the game state while some irrelevant video plays in the background. So, with the release of Poseidon being as strong as he is, I thought that now would be a good time to talk about my issues with what I perceive the direction of the game is taking. Before getting into it, I just wanted to say that I'm having a ton of fun in Smite 2. Even with all the negative stuff I'm about to talk to, I just wanted to make it clear that the only thing keeping me from playing more Smite 2 right now is, just how much time I can actually dedicate to playing Smite 2. With that being said, and moving on, my first point here that I wanted to bring up for the video is what I perceive as them lowering the skill floor with how they have been reducing cooldowns, and on top of that, I want to add with how they have been including so much cooldown reduction into items that I don't know that should have cooldown reduction on them. I understand their viewpoint of they keep saying that, the fun part about Smite is pressing your buttons. People don't have fun when they can't push their buttons. But the problem that I have with that is that the balance of the game is centered around making plays when your opponent's buttons are down. After they use their buttons, you go in on them, Let's look at Chalk and Jungle practice, okay? At full build, level 20, his 1 and 2 are on a 3-second cooldown when building full intelligence and cooldown with a Glad Shield in it. Which, on its face, it's fine that he could get to such low cooldowns. That's actually really cool, right? The problem is that his 1 and 2 do 1k damage every 3 seconds. And not only that, he doesn't just do 1k damage every 3 seconds, right? He's also using his 2, which gives him protections, getting him up to, with this build at level 20, getting him to 280 strength protections and 225 intelligence protections. And that's why there's a Glad Shield in the build, for some cooldown and to make use of all those protections. Not only does he have all those protections, I'm also sitting at 2,700 health without building any health. I'm dealing 3k damage with 2 rotations of his 2+1 combo and 1 ult and some auto attacks. That's not to mention his almost 700 HP heal that ticks for 45 a tick and is up everything but 0.5 seconds every 6 seconds, being that it's on a 6.5 second cooldown with this build. And it has a duration of 6 seconds. It even slows attack speed, like he's slowing your attack speed. He does 1k damage every 3 seconds with his base kit. His ult smacks for however hard that smacks. It's insane, bro. Like his Izanami at level 20 has 2,476 HP. If she builds Death Toll, which is the only item that a carry would build that has max HP on it, she has 2,626 HP. And okay, at least with Chalk, his abilities only do damage, right? And he only has CC immunity on his ultimate. And sure, his axe and dash combo is annoying, and he can get around and he can run pretty far considering he's building movement speed and gem of focus. So it seems like he can teleport much further than he can in Smite 1, right? Like, sure, all those things are true, but at least if you have a team together, one person can stay at the axe, one person can chase him down, and eventually, if he doesn't kill the person chasing him down, you guys can kill him, which is fine. Whatever. Now, let's move on to Sobek. After his rounds of nerfs, Sobek is much less oppressive than he used to be. I still think he's overtuned. Even though the base cooldowns in his kit are basically mirror to those in Smite 1, it doesn't change the fact that CC is stronger in Smite 2. Whether that be from the smaller god pool or from only having access to 1 relic, whatever. I don't think that the 1 relic thing is really that big of an issue. I think mostly it's the low god pool and the size of the map that makes CC so strong. But in my opinion, Sobek is just too tanky to be as mobile as he is. He's too mobile to have as much CC as he has, and he does too much CC for the amount of damage that he does. He might not be pumping out some chalk numbies, you know, but he can do like 1k damage while CCing you and healing himself, which seems excessive to me. When it comes back up in real time, it's like 4 seconds, you know? It's pretty easy, even in support, to hit enough cooldown reduction to have a 7.5 to 6.5 second charge spray, and by the time you're done CCing with the charge spray and then hitting them with your 2, your charge spray ends up being on like a 5 to 4 second cooldown, and that's only like the duration of his CC chain if his active items are down. If Sobek also uses, let's say, Screeching Gargoyle, for example, that's another 2 seconds of CC in his chain, making that charge spray realistically be like a, you know, like a 2 second cooldown. What I mean by realistically, it's like it's the time that you can actually counterplay him because he's not CCing you is like 2 seconds. And sure, like the active item is an extreme example, right? Because you can basically only use it once every team fight, but that's once every team fight that one person is being CC'd for like 4 seconds by just one other person. And you know, a good team is going to follow up with more CC and damage, so that one person who gets CC'd is practically dead. There's no, you know, what are you going to do? And that's not even mentioning like that damage, the damage numbers that we were seeing or that I'm talking about that he's capable of doing. That doesn't mention how they've made it to where now when you pluck, you can hit him in the air as soon as you pluck him. So if you're good enough, you can weave in a bunch of auto attacks in between your abilities without losing any distance and without suffering much from movement speed penalties from auto attacking like you would in Smite 1. And like you can see here in this example, I missed a few autos, and even here I end up doing about 2.5k damage with like just one rotation of my kit. That's kind of crazy. Building just like a normal support build. And a problem is that I don't think Sobek should be displacement immune during dashing, or at the very least, if he's gonna stay displacement immune while dashing, they should remove the CC immunity when he's launching somebody. A nerf I would particularly like to see is letting Sobek be body blocked in his ultimate. I understand that thematically he's like underwater and it's kind of weird to body block him if he's underwater and he's like on a different plane, but we can damage him, so I don't see why we can't body block him. Also, it would just be good for the game if he can't just walk past people. Poseidon is another great example of the cooldown reduction issue in Smite 2, but I'm gonna give him his own section at the very end of the video since he perfectly encapsulates everything I believe is wrong with Smite 2 at the moment. So, and I don't want to spend I don't want to spend the whole video going over the problems with every single god and their cooldown numbers and what that means. So I'm gonna move on to my next bullet point here that I have. Lowering the skill floor with the design mindset at high res. Let's talk about Hecate. That's how I'm gonna say it. Hecate for a few minutes. One of the coolest Smite releases I think of all time. She's not my favorite, but I think she's definitely cool. You know, she's a half stand switcher. She has a really cool ultimate that can get pretty complex with a portal and all that. She has really cool ability effects, which goes a long way to the way a character feels. She also has really high utility with most of her abilities. The one, for example, is a mesmerize every other time you cast it. If it's not a mesmerize, then it applies a mark on the enemy that if another teammate hits them, it does more damage, right? Her 2 can be used against ability spammer gods to make it so where your own 2 does more damage. The 3 can be applied to yourself, your allies. The damage, you can apply it on yourself or on allies. The ultimate can be used to engage or disengage. You can use it to catch up to enemies or run away from them. Like, she has a lot going for her. The problem is the same problem that Sobek has. Sobek just does too much. he just continuously is doing too much and he doesn't stop. It's the same with Chalk. He's going and going and going and going and going and going, and there's never a break. And it's not even about each separate ability being bloated, which they are, right? Every single ability on Hecate's got myself. Every single ability on Hecate's kit is bloated. The one, like I said, is a stance, and it's got that mark, or it's a stance ability, right? So it's got the mesmerize on it. It's got the mark that deals damage. The 2 does, it's a big circle ability. It's easy to land. It comes out quickly. It has a base cooldown of 8 seconds. It can be charged for up to 220% extra damage, not just by your abilities, but also by your allies' abilities and even your enemies' abilities. You know, the 3, it's a magical shield. So, okay, that's fair enough that it also does damage. Since it doesn't block physical damage, it only blocks magical sources of damage. And it only does damage around whoever the shield is applied to. But it also gives Hecate movement speed, regardless of who uses the shield, you know, or who gets the shield. And if that wasn't enough, it also has synergy with the 2, giving 3 stacks for the 2 if you use it while the 2 is active. So even though the 2 only does 250 base damage and 50% intelligence scaling, it's basically always at 4 stacks when you use it, making it at least 40% more scaling and damage than that. So here, for example, in this Ymir bot, I'm level 3 with my 2 rank 1 and without any stacks, doing 54 damage per use of my 2. But if I use my 1 and 3 before using the 2, like you should every single time on Hecate, it does 75 damage, just from my own stacks. And that's just base damage with no items. Late game, the 2 is doing 611 with no stacks, and then like a whopping 963 with only 4 stacks, like with only my kit affecting it. It can go all the way upwards of 1k max stacks, which late game is like pretty easy to achieve with the amount of cooldown spam that there is in the game. You know, everybody's flinging abilities everywhere. And it does, you can do 2,758 damage with 1 ability rotation, not even using the ultimate. Just throwing in some auto attacks between your abilities. And that's a rotation that's back up on a build that isn't cooldown focused in just 10 seconds. That's almost 3k damage every 10 seconds. Sure, one of the abilities is targeted around either yourself or an ally. Sure. But you can reduce that from 10 seconds all the way down to 6 seconds if you build a cooldown focused build. And that brings your one's cooldown down from 7 seconds base cooldown down to 3.5 seconds. So the same ability rotation ends up doing 2,381 total damage. But in the same amount of time that it would take you to do 2 rotations of the not cooldown focused build, right? So the 2,758 damage build, you could instead do 3 rotations of the 2,381 total damage cooldown centered build. And you gotta remember, that's damage without counting for any extra stacks on your 2 from enemies or other allies, or the extra damage from your 1. It's also not taking into account the CC from your 1. It's also not even using your ultimate. That's almost 3,000 damage without using your ultimate. And I know that this is a Ymir bot, right? Like, I'm pretty sure he doesn't have items, and people would normally have more protections. So, I mean, you could skim, what, like 300 damage off of that or something? So she ends up doing like 2,000 in ability rotation, even if it's 1,900 in ability rotation, even if it's 1,500 in ability rotation. 1,500 damage, AoE through the wall, over walls. Also gives you movement speed every, well, the 1 and 2, it's every 3.5 seconds. The 3 every 6 seconds. And now, all of this, the best part is that I think Hecate's, haha, gonna keep saying it, Hecate's kit is really cool. And it's not like she's the easiest god to play, you know, she has a line skill shot, the circle, yeah, it's easy to hit, but you know, not everybody's good at hitting circles, you know, whatever. But with how often you can spam her abilities, it doesn't really matter if you're not good at her or how hard she is or anything like that. If you just keep throwing abilities, you just keep spamming them every like less than 4 seconds, you're bound to hit somebody eventually. There's like she basically has 2 seconds of downtime when she's vulnerable, you know, again, just like Sobek, it comes down to about 2 seconds when they can't respond to a counter engage, which is really cool for fights. You know, it makes fights happen. Even if you catch somebody off guard, you gank them, it's only 3 seconds. So unless you blow them up immediately, they get the fight back. And there's a fight that happens, a fight breaks out. But that, to me, that seems very not strategic. The saving grace to Hecate, not Hecate. The saving grace is that her CC is not, or her ultimate is not CC immune. So when she's casting her ultimate, you can stop her, you know, with any form of CC. And her ult itself is actually pretty easy to avoid unless you're on her face, right? If you're at a distance and she's only trying to hit you with one circle, it's pretty easy to avoid unless you're like dead center of the circle. Hecate, she embodies what they say about abilities and downtime. It's fun to press your buttons. People don't have fun when they can't press their buttons. And it really truly is fun to press your buttons. But it turns a god that on paper, like Hecate, where she has a mesmerize and she has a movement speed and she has a shield and she has high damage, you know, a god that, when you think about it, is probably going to be a little toxic. If somebody's really good at playing her, like they're probably going to be really good and it's going to feel bad playing against her, and they make it super toxic. And now every Hecate you go up against feels toxic to play against because they're constantly spamming you, they're constantly running away. The problem is that there's no drawbacks in her kit. And if somebody wants to have basically 0 cooldowns as a playstyle, I think that's a really cool idea. But it should have an effect more than 400 damage difference in a build that has like a small amount of cooldown to one that is nothing but cooldown focused. 400 damage difference is not enough. Abilities should basically tickle me if you're throwing them constantly at me. It's the same design philosophy around auto attacks, right? Like, I know that in later Smite 1 this became an issue as well, but normally if you only build attack speed, your auto attacks are not going to hit hard, and you're gonna have to land a lot of auto attacks to kill somebody. Whereas if you were to build some power and some attack speed, or just straight power, then you would hit much harder. It's the same with tanks, you know? Tanks shouldn't inherently get damage from building tanky. Right? Like, I think hopefully Hi-Rez has learned that from Bacchus in Smite 2. They also shouldn't get so tanky from their own kits that they don't need to build tank items to be tanky, a la Chalk. High damage gods shouldn't all have movement speed with their builds, you know? Everybody wants Gem of Focus, and honestly, I feel like not many people are building Doom Orb, but Doom Orb is a good item. And they also shouldn't all have movement speed in their abilities. Think Hecate, Ra, Poseidon, Nuwa, Baron, Kukulkan. All of those gods, high damage. Baron, okay, Baron has a little bit lower damage, but he's still, his ultimate still hits upward of 1,000 damage. And Baron, okay, Baron has problems of his own. We're not going to get into that. But what I'm trying to say is that it reduces the need for positioning or awareness, or at least good positioning or awareness, right? It reduces the need to hit your abilities, because missing a Hecate one isn't a big deal, because you can just run away with your movement speed and your 3, and then your 1 is going to be back up in less than 4 seconds. What's the problem? And I'm not even talking about how insane it is that Hecate 1 is on a 7-second base cooldown. It's why? It does high damage. It's a long range ability. It's, I believe, the second longest range out of all the ability ranges that we have. I think the only one that's longer, I believe it's 11.2 meters, and the only one that's longer is Ra's beam, whatever it's called, solar beam or whatever, and that one's like 12.4. It's high damage, it's long range, it has CC on it, it has utility on it. So why is it on a 7-second cooldown? All right, enough of that. Let's switch gears and let's talk about let's take a break real fast, actually, and let's remember that I have been loving Smite 2. It is currently the most fun game out there for me. I'm loving it. The team is killing it. It's just there are things that I think they're not thinking about, or I'm not sure what the problem here is, but it's fine. They're doing great. I love it. Smite 2, super fun to play. Now, let's talk about the disappointment that I've felt with how unique scalings have been handled. I remember when they announced that they would be doing unique scaling for abilities in Smite 2, and I think that they used Chalk as an example, right? Turns out what they meant with Chalk was that they're gonna give his healing int scaling, and then also give him int scaling on the damage that he does, so that he just does a shit ton of damage and he heals. Okay, alright, whatever. They were saying that the different scalings, unique scalings for abilities in Smite 2 would give them the opportunity to better balance the scale, between hard crowd control and damage on the same ability, which in turn would give them the ability to make gods more flexible into more roles without breaking the game. Like, for example, letting Athena do more damage if she builds damage so that she can also jungle, for example, while also not giving her a 2-second taunt that also, deals a lot of damage. And they sort of did this. I mean, the taunt went from a 2.05 max rank taunt in Smite 1 to a 1.35 second taunt at max rank with a 0.2 second added duration per 150 protections from items, stacking up to 2 times. So that means max you can get your taunt to do is a 1.75 second duration. And I'm confused. So she ended up with a weaker taunt when building full tank or support than she had in Smite 2. And okay, the max duration is lower when you're building power, but it's still over a second taunt. It's over 1 second crowd control, hard crowd control. To me, it seems like a really strange case, because Athena's not overpowered. And if anything, she's underperforming as a support. So she's to me what I perceive of as a good example of lack of solid direction on the part of Hi-Rez. She's a worse tank now than she was in Smite 1, and she's also less unique when it comes to dealing damage. When in Smite 1, to jungle Athena, you practically built like you did with most Guardians, right? You would build poly and then try to go for the reach poly. The good part about that is that it also made the rest of your kit smack, right? Your ultimate hit really hard if you managed to hit with it. Your 1 would hit hard, so would your 3. Obviously, that's not what you were going for. You were going for the reach and the reach auto cancels. But now in Smite 2, the reach build is a crit build, which on its face, you know, again, on its face, it's fine. It's cool. Athena can crit now, and reach can crit, which is super dope, and it's fun, and I've done it, and it's really fun. But the synergy in her build is less now, because if you build crit, then you're just building full strength, unless you're building death metal, right? Which, sure, whatever. Tiniest amount of intelligence scaling. But if you're building full crit, then your 2 doesn't have any scaling, because you're not building intelligence. Your 3 doesn't have any scaling because you're not building intelligence. Neither does your ultimate. The only ability that gains scaling from going full crit is your 1. And then if you decide to try the Smite 1 bop build, right? When you build Polynomicon and go for like a high intelligence build, well, now your 1 doesn't get any scaling because your 1 is only strength scaling. So in a way, she's worse both as a damage dealer and as a support. And this really wouldn't bother me much, since I'm all for giving gods mixed damage scaling like that. I think it's great. I think it's awesome to like split the build apart and be like, oh no, if you want to focus on this part of the kit, then you have to build this or whatever. Like, I was super hype when I found out that Anubis Wrap did physical damage. I was all for letting gods deal mixed damage outputs. That was so cool. I was into it. I was super into it. Let's go, bro. But given that but we didn't get that, obviously, right? People were too confused about that, even though to me it didn't make sense, because all it really meant was just that you want to, for most matches, you just want to match your prots, right? Your physical and magical prots. It just made it to where you wanted to even those out more, instead of in Smite where you could get a team of 5 physicals and now the game is over because you all just build physical defense and you win. But whatever, that's fine. We got rid of that, and now there's still unique scaling within the build or the kit, which is fine. That's fine. But the reason that they gave for, like, for example, Athena 1 being a strength scaling ability is that it is like a, you know, like a physical focused, like a material thing. You know, she charges physically forward and hits you with her own body, even though I would argue that it's a magical dash, because she doesn't just dash, she has to like charge it up, and you know, if it was like a physical thing, you'd think she'd just be able to do it, but she has to like whatever, you know, I don't know. And I know they said that intelligence doesn't mean magical. It might mean like agility based or something like that. And I would say it still falls under that category, because she has to like, I mean, she's Athena, like the strategist, right? Like she has to like think it through or whatever the fuck. But whatever. They say that it's like a physical ability and it's like a whatever material. So it is physical. Then can you explain to me why Sobek only has intelligence scaling when every single one of his abilities is more of a material ability than Athena Dash? The Charge Prey is him running faster immediately, right? It's not like a Athena Dash where she's not running, she just kind of like teleports forward a little bit or whatever, you know? Like Sobek is charging forward and then he just stabs you with his axe and throws you. That's pretty physical, pretty material, pretty substantial, right? Like a pretty physical thing. That's strength right there, buddy. The 2, it's called Tail Whip. He hits you with his tail. How much more physical does it get than him hitting you with his tail? The 3 is the only one that I could see being like magical, because even though it's physical scales that he's throwing at you, it heals him, right? So that's kind of magical or whatever. But if that's the logic, then should Thanatos' Scythe have magical scaling because it heals you and it also returns to his hand magically? I mean, those are like some stoner thoughts, you know what I'm saying? It doesn't make sense, bro. It seems like the further along in development we go, the more that Hi-Rez is catering to the lowest common denominator. The reality is that Sobek only has intelligence scaling because it makes him easier to play and therefore makes him stronger. It makes him easier to build for, especially to people who have no idea what they're doing with their builds. It makes all of his abilities gain synergy from the same effects, right? He only has to build intelligence and all of his abilities will hit harder. There's no thought there. You don't have to worry about it. Don't worry about what you put in your little build. It makes him easier to just turn your brain off, press your buttons, and have fun. And I don't know, there are things that you can do, you know? Like, for example, I've always thought that Athena should get a damage reduction buff to enemies hitting her who she taunted for the duration of the taunt, right? Not just a damage reduction to anybody hitting her, only to the people who she has taunted. That way, late game, if she taunts a carry, she doesn't die from it. Sobek, on the other hand, Sobek doesn't have to worry about something like that in Smite 2, because Sobek is going to deal all of his damage to you while you can't fight back. He's going to charge prey you. He's going to hit you with an auto attack while you're midair. When you land, he's going to hit you with a knockup, and then he's going to auto you in the air again. Then he's probably going to hit you with an active item to CC you again. He's going to keep autoing you. Then he's going to charge prey you again. Or he's going to charge prey away. And there's practically nothing you can do about it. And if you do stop him, he's just going to ult and walk away because you can't body block him. Let's switch gears real fast and talk about Khepri for a second. I don't think Khepri is strong. I think he's great. I think he's fine. I think he's perfectly great. I think he's in a perfect place. I think the changes to his ultimate are perfect. You know, it's not wasteful now to use your ultimate on somebody who isn't dying. You can actually help them kill somebody. And let's say you accidentally use the ult on the wrong person, and the person you used the ult on wasn't about to die. At least now they'll do more damage, right? So there's, you know, it's great. It's great. It's perfect. My problem with Khepri is the ball. You know, the one, your ball, the one you throw, the one you let people play with. The ball explosion makes it to where you don't have to aim. You don't, it's so big. And Khepri doesn't tend to be a right in the middle, you know, he's not like super front line in the thick of it kind of god. He's more like backline. So if you see a ball of enemies, you throw your ball at it. If you see a ball of teammates, you throw your ball at it. It's that easy. It doesn't matter. You just throw your ball at it, and if you throw it within the vicinity of where they are, you're more than likely gonna hit somebody. And is that a big deal? No, not really. Khepri balls aren't the most impactful of balls. They're not game-changing balls, you know? They're nice balls, and they're nice and sparkly, but they're probably not going to sway the game one way or the other, unless they really buff that ability. But it's another example of just throwing something on an ability to make it more rewarding at lower skill levels without really any creativity. Like, for example, Thanatos. Thanatos is his +1, like his change through his 3, is the one thing in Smite 2 that makes me the most sad. Thanatos is, I would say for the majority of players, Thanatos is 75% cool factor, 25% play style. That's why people play him, right? It's to feel cool, it's to look cool, it's to be an edgy edgelord, and 25% is you like the way he plays. You might end up loving the way he plays because it feeds into that cool factor, right? Like the 75%. But the way that they made the 3 come out faster, they reduced the wind-up time, and they made it a better auto-attack cancel. And if you had never played Thanatos in Smite 1, and you were new to Smite 2, and you pick up Thanatos, it probably feels really good to use, because I'm not gonna lie, the ability moves like butter. It feels fine. And the extra speed means that you can pump out damage faster than you ever could in Smite 1. But in my opinion, the loss of the feel from the pre-fire delay and the dropped cool factor makes his kit feel very cheap, very generic. It feels like it lacks weight and impact, and given that it's his only real change, I think it's completely uninspired. A better change, in my opinion, would be to change... Okay, so change the timing of the silence and the damage so that it's a 2-part ability. Currently, the way it works is that the silence on the 3 is applied at the same time that you deal damage. I would have split the ability into 2-part ability. I would have left the animation the same way that it was in Smite 1. Maybe, depending on how it all ended up working out, I would have even extended the animation a little bit. And I would have made it to where the initial animation, where, you know, he like opens up his wings and he swings his scythe back and he screeches at the enemies in front of him. That would be the silence portion of the ability. As soon as you fire the ability, the silence would go off in the size of the 3 cone. And then the ability would play like normal. You would screech, the silence would apply, it would last for the duration of the silence, and then he would swing like normal, like it normally does now, and that's when the damage would be applied like normal. That way, it doesn't feel like you're sitting there with your pants down for a second or whatever until you do damage. That way, you don't take an ability that's probably one of the cooler abilities in Smite from a feel factor, in my opinion, obviously, and you take what was already there, what was already iconic, what already had cool factor, what was already a large portion for what people like. Again, I'm not saying people played Thanatos because they loved his 3, right? I'm saying they played Thanatos because of the entire theme of Thanatos, because of how it all worked together. So with my example, you would still keep that cool factor, it would still feel weighty and impactful, and it would be unique, and you wouldn't feel like you're caught with your pants down every time you use your 3. It would be more interesting visually and more interesting from a gameplay standpoint, because as it is now, Thanatos is basically, and I'll probably get some hate for this, but he's basically just old Loki. Like, his kit is whatever. What matters about his kit is that he has 3 quick auto attack cancels, and you have to weave all of those in, and that's basically his kit. That's like the personality of his kit is now I auto attack cancel. And to me, that loss of personality is not worth the benefit of the faster cast time. And I would argue that the feel of the ability is worse in Smite 2 than it is in Smite 1. Because in Smite 1, you feel the reap. In Smite 2, you're just using it so you can auto attack cancel. Alright, let's move on. Let's talk about the Ganesha in the room. Poseidon. Let's wrap up this video. It's probably been going on for way too long already, so let's wrap up this video with Poseidon. All of the changes made to Poseidon encapsulate the problems that I've been talking about. They made all three of his abilities have a base 10-second cooldown. In Smite 1, the 2 had a base cooldown of 15 seconds. And the 3 had a base cooldown of, I don't remember if it was 16 or 15, going down to 11-second cooldown. The Trident buff duration from the 2 still lasts 6 seconds, even though the cooldown has been reduced by 5 seconds at base. That means that with just a little bit of cooldown, your 2 is basically always active. And with just building Book of Thoth, you will never run out of mana. It's extremely easy to get enough cooldown that your 2 is always active. It's easy to get enough cooldown to make it to where you can reactivate your 2 before the duration runs out. With a normal mid build, your entire combo is up every 5.5 seconds. And your 3 and your enhanced 1 together, with no auto attacks from your 2, deal 2,077 damage, which I know normally people don't sit in the whirlpool for the entire duration, but again, that's without any auto attacks or your ultimate. Up every 5.5 seconds. And then there's the enhanced 1 itself, the +1, the triple tidal surge. The other +1 that they did is that they removed the post-fire delay on the 2's animation so that you could use it as an auto attack cancel, okay? What they didn't talk about is that means that now your triple tidal surge, you can use it off of your 2 with 0 delay. In Smite 1, it used to be if you used your 2, you know, there was a little bit of delay before you could use any action. Now, there's 0 downside to using your enhanced 1, or if your 2 wasn't active, there's no downside to using your 2 before using your 1 to enhance it, because you're not going to have any post-fire delay, it's basically not going to cost you mana, and your 2 will be back up before your 2's duration runs out. So your 2's going to be up the entire time you're playing Poseidon. Like after you build Book of Thoth and 1 cooldown item, your 2 is always up. The 1 now, with the enhanced version, it's easier to hit, it comes back up every 5 seconds, which means you can get 2 enhanced tidal surges per the duration of your 2 in late game. All 3 surges can hit on the same opponent. The hitbox on it is so extremely bad, just like Baron Brew, bro. It's so extremely bad that the 3 tidal surges are basically just a giant cone. I tried and I tried and I tried to miss on a Ymir bot. I couldn't do it. Couldn't miss. The range on the ability is one of the longest in the game. It's the same length as Hecate 1, only falling behind to Ra's Sunbeam. As far as I'm aware anyway. Poseidon's +1, which let's be honest, it was a +2, maybe a +3, is just extra damage, extra area control, extra speed, extra cooldown, and you don't have to do anything special or different to get it. You just play Poseidon the way you've always played Poseidon, but your damage output and your uptimes are cranked all the way to the max. The tidal surge breaking into 3 abilities, it's interesting, it's cool, but it's really sad that they can't seem to get abilities to match targeters. They also seem scared to give drawbacks to anything. Like, an easy solution to Poseidon spam is make it so that the enhanced tidal surge eats the remaining duration of the 2 buff whenever you use it. So like if you use the 2 and then you immediately use the 1, it would eat the duration of your 2 and your 2 would go on cooldown and you no longer have enhanced auto attacks. And here's also a chance for some actual unique scaling for something that would be cool. Make it so that the damage on the sides, the side surges, the little ones, that damage and the damage on the trident buff itself that gets applied to the tidal surge, make it reliant on the duration of the 2 buff. So for example, if let's say the timer on your 2 is 80% or higher of the total duration of it, then the side tidal surges as well as the trident buff damage that's applied to the tidal surges would be 100% of whatever it is now. And then as the duration of the trident buff wears down, the enhanced tidal surge would do less and less damage until it only does slightly more than a normal tidal surge. So if you used the 2, used a bunch of auto attacks, and your 2 is about to wear out, and then you tidal surge, it wouldn't be as strong as if you used the 2 and then immediately tidal surged. It's almost like you would have to make decisions as you're playing about what you want to do and how you want your damage to come out. I don't know, man. I feel as though there are solutions, but Hi-Rez can't be afraid of people having to learn something. They can't be scared because people play something one time, don't get it, and then bitch about it. It's a really cool idea to expand god roles and to make it to where gods can play more roles. It is not cool to do it by just giving everybody more damage. There's some real chances here to make some really unique and interesting stuff. Like I was talking about with the tidal surge, duration damage. You know, we could control power creep as we go along instead of pushing it further and further and further along until we eventually break Smite again. Not everybody can win in a MOBA, right? There has to be a side that loses. Everybody can't have their buttons up all the time. You lose too much detail of what it means to be playing a MOBA, and more specifically Smite, when you can just spam like that, when there is no downside to anything you do. Anyway, this was just my 2 cents. I want to, once again, at the end of the video, I did this in the middle, I want to reiterate, I am loving Smite 2. I think Smite 2 is already, currently, better than Smite 1. Better than Smite 1 ever was. I paused there for a minute because I was thinking about when I first started playing Smite. No, Smite 2 is better than Smite 1 ever was, already. And it's only going to get better. And I think the team at Hi-Rez is doing an amazing job. I just wanted to put my 2 cents out there. Hopefully, if people feel the way I feel, then hopefully Hi-Rez will adjust accordingly. If not, I'm in the minority and I don't matter. But anyway, thanks for watching. This was my first attempt at doing a video like this. So if you liked it, please leave a like, comment for more, or comment for more. Leave a comment if you'd like, subscribe for more, and I'll catch you guys next time.
You are my friend. I don't hear.